Welcome to The Right Stuff. I am James Mansfield, and today I am going to give another update kind of on what I've been working on. Now, I don't really expect anybody, excuse me, to be watching these videos, at least at the moment, but my hope is that can be kind of a catalog of what I've gone through as a writer, like some of the hurdles that I've had to go over, some of the obstacles that have been blocking me, and just kind of how I've tried to subvert those things in my journey to become a published author. And now, right now, I'm going to try to be doing more of these, and this is just an easy way to kind of, go about telling my story, I guess. And if there's ever a time where I become a published author and gain some modicum of modicum of fame or renown, that I can, people can look back on these and kind of see some of the things that they might go through as an author, and maybe some of the solutions that can be found in facing certain obstacles or hindrances. So now I think some of these might be on my other channel, but I'm going to try to start making sure that all of these are on The Right Stuff. That way it's a home, and I can create a playlist of these, and that'll just make it a whole lot easier. So what has been going on? If you've seen any of my other past videos, you know that as an author, I have been working on a series called Ivory Chronicles. Now that might change one day, obviously, but Ivory Chronicles is a high fantasy series that I've been trying to get off the ground. What I've been trying to do most recently is get the first book out, right? Because when you're creating a trilogy, you can't really query book 2 or book 3. You have to start at book 1, and book 1 is my first book, my first full book that I've ever written, and I have made the mistake of trying to get that off the ground without going through the process of creating some other book that was not quite so near and dear to me, something that I haven't spent a ton of time working on and investing a whole bunch of work in. So that was one of my biggest mistakes, is trying to get my first book published. Now, it's possible. I'm sure it's possible. I can't think of any specific examples of people who have made that work, but I'm sure it's happened. But what I need to do, or what I need to do and what I have been doing, is put my best writing self back into that first book, because I do want to publish it someday. I think I have potential in that book, and I have a potential for an audience, but the fact that I started it and began writing it before I had the level of skill that I should have, it's holding me back, and I know that. Now, I think I'm at a point, I don't know for sure, because I don't have much of a point of reference, but I think I'm at the point now where I have the skill level to create a book that is publish worthy. And unfortunately, even though I vowed like 2 or 3 times that this edition is going to be my last edition, no, this edition is going to be my last edition, I was almost 100% sure that this last time that I went through my first Ivory Chronicles book, that was going to be the last, and I wasn't going to bother with it anymore, no matter what. I find myself coming back to it. I know that the beginning, especially, is not where it needs to be, but I've always put off trying to rewrite it, because I didn't want to go through all that effort of basically reforming the beginning and telling almost kind of the same story, but it needs to be redone completely. I need to scrap everything, start fresh, and redo the beginning. Now, I think I can make that work with kind of the rest of it. About the first third or fourth of it is what I need to redo. So eventually I will be doing that. I will probably keep the rest, and I think I can make it work with the rest of the book. But the beginning is where it really brings it down. And I need to bolster that as much as I can, and the only way I can do that is to redo it. The rest of it needs work too, because even my prose, even after I've gone through it, are still weak. And what I've done now, and the work that I've done now, I can go back through and I know that I can fix it and I can improve it to the point where it shines much brighter than it does now. It's going to take a lot of work, and it's super frustrating, but with everything that I've put into Ivory Chronicles, honestly, to me, it's worth it. As much as I don't want to, as much as I hate trying to go through all this, I've grown attached to Ivory Chronicles, and I don't want to give it up. And I can fix it, I can make it work, but it's going to take investment. So, and I think I strayed from this point earlier. What had happened was that I went to a writer's conference, and I pitched my first book to an editor from Del Rey, and he liked the idea of it, so he let me email my first 50 pages to him, and it went a few months without hearing back anything, and I prodded, and finally I heard back, and like, that was just the greatest thing ever, because there was this big editor from a very well-known publishing house who requested my manuscript, but he rejected it. I do feel good that I made it that far, but it was still incredibly frustrating to know that it still wasn't good enough. Even though I had such high hopes that maybe this was finally going to be it. So, I don't blame this editor at all. Professionals in the industry have to make that choice. They know from a professional standpoint when something's good and worth it and when it's not. And they also have to be invested in it. They also have to take a shining to it. It's not all objective. They can't just objectify the quality of it. They have to have some subjective investment in it too. And I understand that. So, what am I going to do now? Well, I am going to fix book 1, but that's going to be down the road a little bit. Right now, I am going to finish another book that I've been tinkering with, but haven't put any good long-term investment in, simply because Ivory Chronicles has taken the spotlight. And so I have a book that's, I guess you'd call it a comedy, that I am going to finish. I'm maybe about halfway, a little less than halfway through my first draft, and I'm going to be focusing on that, trying to polish it. I just needed to get out of Ivory Chronicles for a little bit. I need to get out. I need to try my hand at something else just to see if my writing can be publish worthy. And because I know that I haven't really dove in to fixing the first book of Ivory Chronicles, I need to take a step aside into this other thing and see if it's something that has the potential to be published. It's completely different from fantasy. It's in the first person instead of third, which is how I wrote Ivory Chronicles. and it's a different genre, so it's going to be interesting. And I don't know exactly how what the likelihood is of this being successful. I feel like I'm going to have a better chance at success if I try to complete something that is outside of what I've been working on and trying to improve for a long time. And ultimately, my goal is to become a published author, to be able to get my work out there. And if I can do that through a different genre, something completely different, then I'm all for it. But I think that will also give me a stepping stone to be able to get me closer to publishing Ivory Chronicles once it's ready, so I can get ready. And then when I'm querying this, I can kind of say, hey, I have this book, and I've also published this book, and this has been met with some success. So I think that will help. And this gives me a plan, because for a long time, getting rejected, I just kind of fell into this, well, I don't know what to do anymore. What do I work on? What is it worth even trying to do Ivory Chronicles anymore? Should I scrap it? Should I scrap my 2 entire books that I've already written in the series? And I just feel like this move is going to help me a bunch in the long run. And I've even heard similar stories, like Brandon Sanderson. I've heard his story of where he wrote a bunch of novels, none of them worked, and finally he wrote something else. I think, was it Elantris was his first book, if I remember right. That was actually published and met with success. So it wasn't completely outside of his wheelhouse, but it was still something that wasn't the same as some of the other projects that he had started. And so the Stormlight Archive was something that he wrote before and he didn't publish, and then he eventually rewrote the entire daggum thing and published it once he got bigger. So that's my hope. That's my plan. I am going to continue as I'm finishing this other book, which I'm not going to name now. I'm not going to say a whole lot about, just because I will continue kind of plotting out and working towards book 3 of Ivory Chronicles, because I don't want to completely let it go. But I don't think I'm going to dive into actually writing it. I'm going to do a little plotting, and I'm still rereading some of my previous books in the series, just to kind of make sure that I keep my plot lines and stuff going. But I'm going to be working on that in the background while I'm working on this newer book. And then from there, I'll shift gears as I need to. But until then, I guess I'll see what happens, see if I can find any level of success of getting published, and hopefully I'll have more stories to tell, and once it pops, I hope it just keeps going, and it gives me momentum to become a published writer and to keep doing what I love and actually get paid to do it, which is the dream. I want to earn a living doing what I love, and I'm 36 years old, and it's been a long time. So that's all I have for this update. If you do watch this, if you've watched through my however many minutes of rambling on about stuff you probably don't care about, maybe you do, and if you do, then great. Thank you for watching. Thank you for taking an interest in what I'm doing, and I hope this kind of archive of my journey to becoming a published writer is inspiring. So until next time, I will see you then.